leads to everybody losing. Until now, we did not learn it. Until now, we still have struggle of power in every Muslim country. And when they start struggling for power, they seek help from outside. And they repeat Andalus exactly. And copy and paste. Why it is continuing? It is continuing for only one reason, because we are accepting it. I mean, yes, people complain. Yes, people criticize. Yes, people spend hours talking, discussing politics. But at the end of the day, we are accepting it. The moment the masses reject the situation, it will not last 1 minute. But overall, we are accepting it. Why we are accepting it? That's a big issue. Big topic. Why we are accepting it? Some of it because of religious misconception that leads to patience in the wrong place. You just have to be patient. Obedience to ruler, very wrong concept, that you have to obey and keep quiet. Qada and qadar, the wrong way. And we treat things that are the result of corruption and oppression and incompetence as if it is qada wa qadar. We just have to live with it. Our tendency to adapt to situation rather than changing it. Muslims in general they lean more toward adapting rather than change. So they keep adapting until they cannot take it anymore, and then they explode. That explosion sometimes produces nothing, sometimes produces chaos. So you go from dictatorship or oppression to chaos or civil war. So we have been in this cycle for centuries. If you want to summarize the history of Muslim, it has been swinging between dictatorship and chaos. It's a pendulum. One strong dynasty oppress everybody will be quiet for a while, and then as soon as there is a weakness, people will rebel, and then you have a period of transition of chaos until another dynasty, another Safah, another whatever, establish law and order. Everybody will be quiet for a while, and that cycle, we have been in that cycle for so long, and we have seen the last episode of it is the Arab Spring. We have seen transition from dictatorship to chaos. So we live it. We have seen it. Now, not only we're reading it in history, but we have seen it. We have seen Libya, Yemen, etc. They went from dictatorship to chaos. It's a mindset that has to change. It's approaches that we adopt. They are very futile. They don't lead anywhere. And I always summarize our approach, the way we deal with things and with events. We have a number of tools. All of them are inefficient. The first thing that we use is denial. There is a problem. No, there we don't have problem. There is a problem. It's there. Yani. No, look the other way. It will go. No, it doesn't go when you look the other way. Yani, there is a problem. Nowadays, if you think about just an example, our community has all the problems that exist in society, they exist in our community, but people are in denial. There is drugs in our community. There is everything that you can think of. But people are in denial. They just slip it under the rug. That's the second approach. So the first approach is, no, it does not exist. The second approach is justification. We are so, I heard it one time from a young Muslim. I was giving a lecture and they said, brother, you're right. We don't seem to run out of, we never run out of excuses. I said, yes, we have excuses for everything. Everything that goes wrong, you rarely hear someone saying it was my fault or I learned my lesson. No, it is because this and that. So justification, blaming, and scapegoating, finding somebody to blame, it's because of conspiracy. No, we're victims of conspiracy. And then that makes you feel very good. You do nothing about it. Victims of conspiracy. They are doing it for us. And I mentioned this before, I believe. I always use the typical example of the soccer team, the national soccer team, when they lose. The referee was against us. The food was not good. The weather was humid. The pitch was not in good shape. And the wind was against us. And they say the wind is too, but there are first half and second half. So if it was against you the first half, did the wind change the second half and also continue to be against you? So these excuses will lead nowhere. I remember one time the coach of the French team played Argentina in many, many years ago. Argentina was stronger than them. So they lost the game in Paris. They lost, and it shocked me what the French coach said. And he said, we are a good team, but today we played a great team. And we learned our lessons. There are so many lessons that we learned. That's how you improve. It's not the referee, it's not the pitch, it's not anything. It's we played a great team and there were some deficiencies. We're going to work on them. So, yeah, that's how people improve. And that's how advanced nations operate. Planning, evaluation, assessment, accountability, documentation, lessons learned all the time, and the feedback, the loop. And they always build on successes and learn from mistakes. That's why mistakes do not get repeated, because of that system. It's a long way to go. It's a mindset that has to change. It's a religious misconception they have to change. We really need to work hard to break this cycle, produce a generation of Muslims who are mission-driven, who really believe in Islam as a mission and embraced as a mission, and believe in the high purposes of Islam, or maqasid, and try to make them happen, or to establish them, and rediscover their original Islam, the Islam that was lost over the centuries. Very inspiring, very empowering, very spiritual, produces vibrant spirituality. It produces very decent people, akhlaq. That Islam was lost. It's not there. Believe me, between the Islam that you see there today and between the original Islam, it's only they look, there is, on the surface, they look the same. You scratch the surface and you find there is no comparison. There is no comparison. It's like real jewelry and fake jewelry. They look the same, but there is no comparison in value. So we're going to have to rediscover that original Islam, embrace it, and raise generation, break this cycle, and raise generation who are really more open-minded, more ambitious, with very high aspirations, and determined to put Islam back on the map, and to put Muslims also back on the map as a model and leading community. I know this is now, it looks like impossible, but believe me, it is not. The religion that produced that great success stories and that great community, it's still there. It just requires people who are sincere and serious about it, and it will produce similar results. Islam, if it is properly understood and sincerely and practiced and advocated, should produce the same results, because the results that was produced in the early days did not happen by miracles. It's not like Rasul Sallallahu and his companions were just working haphazardly and Allah made it for them. No, there was a vision, there was a leadership, there was a plan, there was a strategy, there was a model that we have to understand and try to replicate. And the proof is that there were some setbacks. There were some mistakes. Quran was revealed to tell them, no, you were not right here. You were wrong. And it was in very harsh language, by the way. Very, very harsh language. That all of this confirm that it was human efforts, but it was a very effective model. Embracing Islam as a mission with great goals, and then adopting the prophetic model of leadership. The amazing, simple model, but very effective, that combine consultation, shura, but also decisiveness. وشاورهم في الأمر فإذا عزمت فتوكل. It's a beautiful combination between the two. Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam used to consult extensively, but he was also decisive. It's not like consultation that leads to paralysis. No, there is a time for decision and for execution, very high discipline. It was individual leadership and collective leadership at the same time. People nowadays think these are not compatible. You can have one or the other. No, that's not true. It was individual and collective leadership. It was a lot of compassion. فبما رحمة من الله لنت لهم ولو كنت فظا غليظ القلب لانفضوا من حولك فاعف عنهم واستغفر لهم وشاورهم في الأمر فإذا عزمت فتوكل على الله. One verse summarizes the great model, leadership model of Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, together with the verse at the end of Surah At-Tawbah, in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لَقَدْ جَاءَكُمْ رَسُولٌ مِنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ عَزِيزٌ عَلَيْهِ مَا عَنِتُّمْ. He feels your pain, not these corrupt leaders fighting for power for the sake of power. عَزِيزٌ عَلَيْهِ مَا عَنِتُّمْ. And he feels your pain and your suffering. حَرِيصٌ عَلَيْكُمْ. He wants to see you in the best possible shape. بِالْمُؤْمِنِينَ رَؤُوفٌ رَحِيمٌ. We only have ourselves to blame. As they say, Islam is a winnable case, but right now it's in the hand of a lousy lawyer. The case is winnable, very, but it requires just not even an excellent lawyer. It requires a decent lawyer. It requires people who really, we don't need to beautify Islam. Is very beautiful, very inspiring. And that's what people say when they discover it on their own. People who revert to Islam after they found it, they are shocked. Why we were never told about this? It's like somebody find a treasure. It's it's doable. We are in much better shape and much better starting point than the point from which Prophet Muhammad ﷺ started. Much more resources, many more in numbers. There is no reason why we don't do it. We don't make it happen.
May I ask a question here?
Sure.
Everything you said about the Muslims adapting and accepting wrong situations and hoping it will change by the grace of Allah, by some miracle, supported by some hadith somehow.
That's true.
So, I mean, I can speak freely in this group because I think we share something here. We have been afraid for hundreds of years to challenge hadiths which are obviously fake. I'll give you an example. There is a hadith that you should give obedience to your ruler even if he's a Negro slave, and if he if he whips your backs and this and that, you still have to give. طب this hadith, what does that what does that lead us? is this a hadith that really it complies with what Rasulullah ﷺ did? It's obviously fake. But it still exists in our culture, in our books. Let me give you a more stark example here. ISIS, Daesh, ISIS, and Al-Qaeda, everything they did was supported with some hadith and fatwa from Ibn Taymiyyah and from the books of Bukhari and Muslim, for God's sake. Everything they did, they supported it.
That's true.
When do we have the courage to say, you know what, let's take all these hadiths out of the books? Why are they still being, this is a challenge for Al-Azhar, by the way, and some people did challenge Al-Azhar. When are you going to do basically a cleanup of all these things that you are still teaching in the religious schools? You meet a traditionally trained imam nowadays, especially in the Arab countries. Even here, some of them come to this country and they repeat the same things. And they keep mentioning these things that obviously lead to the same disastrous result which we are discussing. Do you agree? How do we do this? When do we get to remove all this bad tradition from our books, from our teachings, from our masjids?
Wallahi, if we're gonna wait forever. Just have to take the initiative. I wish, inshallah, one day we manage to get the time and the resources to do that cleanup that you're talking about. It's not even cleanup, and I really want to emphasize this idea that in Quran, even before the Hadith, there are verses that are foundational and there are verses that are contextual. And clear distinction has to be made, and we need to raise a Muslim generation who have these clear distinction in mind. That qital, for example, fighting in Islam, it's not a principle. It is not something that is a pillar of Islam. It's something that these verses are contextuals. وَقَاتِلُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ الَّذِينَ يُقَاتِلُونَكُمْ. There are people who fight you. So that's only in that context. There is no such thing as you can be very good Muslim and die as a good Muslim and you never participated in any fight or any physical whatever. So starting from the Quran itself, I wish we can have, again, the time and the resources to produce a text that emphasizes this idea and try to extract from the Quran the foundational verses and try to teach those to anybody who embraces Islam or to young people first and foremost, and then tell them that these verses are contextual. Contextual means they can apply in one context, they don't apply in another, etc. But these are the principles and these are the foundation of religion. La ikraha fi din is foundational. وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةً لِلْعَالَمِينَ, it's foundational. It's not contextual. It's not like you can be mercy here and etc. And then we do that to the hadith. And for the hadith, enough focusing on the chain of narration. That's what Bukhari and Muslim and everybody did. It's about time to focus on the matan, not on the sanad. Go to the matan and do the same thing. It's not focusing on the sanad, on the narration. Matan, what is foundational and relevant for us in America here, for example, and we produce our own book of hadith. These are the hadith we believed, we extracted them, we went into all the sihah, and we extracted these hadith that we believe they are more than likely authentic because they're consistent with the principles of the Quran and they are relevant for us here. Somebody else in another context, they do the same thing and they can come up with a different hadith because their context is different. They can come up with different selection here. And it's not the end of the world. Now, we had one idea that had a big role in bringing us to this point, that any hadith in Bukhari is authentic, and we just have to justify it. It should never have happened like that. That idea, which I believe was initiated mainly by
Shafi'i.
and the one who did Sharh al-Bukhari, Fath al-Bari.
Shafi'i بدأ بالوحيين.
Yeah.
محمد أوتي الوحيين.
Yeah.
Which is a man-made idea.
Yeah. So we need to remove that idea and Islam is not fragile, that we are afraid if we say this hadith in Bukhari is not correct, then the whole Islam will collapse. Islam is not in baby incubators. And many people treat Islam as if it is in baby incubators. So if we do something wrong, Islam will die. And that's not true. So remove that idea, go to these books of hadith, and then extract from them what is relevant and what is consistent with the foundational verses of the Quran, and also do the same thing that these hadith that Rasul ﷺ mentioned may or may not be authentic, and even if they are not authentic, even if they are authentic, they are contextuals. They are not foundational. They are contextuals, because remember that Quran and the Prophet ﷺ, they were doing two things at the same time. And wallahi, I wish this idea is promoted and rooted in the minds of Muslims. Quran was doing two things at the same time, giving guidance for all Muslims at all places and all times, and directing that particular community in Arabian Peninsula at that particular time. That's why it has foundational verses that are timeless, but has contextual verses that apply to different contexts, because that community went through different contexts and Quran was guiding its steps. So again, I wish this idea again will be promoted and rooted.
I'm doing it now. May I comment? I'm doing it now.
Good.
I'm doing a book based on the themes of the Quran.
Okay, good, great.
Arabic and English.
Great.
I'm going to have two books, one in Arabic, one in English.
Great.
Now, it's based on distinguishing between al-Rasul and al-Nabi. What you're talking about, النبوة does not have any interpretation because آياتها مغلقة. عم تحكي عن الخلق. لو اجتمعت الإنس والجن يفسروا كيف رب العالمين خلق ما فيهم، لكن ممكن مع الوقت نفهم أكثر. We can with time, because the text is fixed and the meaning is dynamic. With time we'll understand more. But آيات النبوة خاصة اللي بتحكي عن العبادات، عفوا آيات الرسالة اللي بتحكي عن العبادات هذه وحدها، وآيات النبوة اللي بتحكي عن الخلق وعن قصص
English, doctor.
Yes. So, well, I'm sorry. I thought I'm speaking in English. The verses of prophethood and the verses of the message, the messenger and the prophet. Verses of the prophet are talking about creation, talking about qasas al-Quran, the stories of the Quran, talking about amthal, and talking about mu'jizat, while the verses of the message are talking about your relationship with me, my relationship with you, and our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They're not the same.
No.
We had a prophet and we had a messenger, and if we don't look at the book as at least two books, we'll be confused like we were for the last 1400 years. Now, as far as the hadith is concerned, Turkey did this 5 years ago. They got a committee from the University of Ankara, all scholars of hadith. They sat down together and they produced a new collection of hadith from the Sahihain. But they did not dare do it in Arabic. They did it only in English, in Turkish. One day, I was invited to give a lecture at the University of Jordan, Kulliyat Sharia. I used to be invited for every semester. That day, I had a meeting with the dean because I simply mentioned what Turkey is doing for the hadith. They stopped inviting me. That was the end of it. Do you think people know how to think freely? Do you think people allow you personally, to think freely? If they can, they will kill us alive. Simply for what we're saying here right now.
That's true.
This is not acceptable by
That's
the
true.
majority of Muslims at this time.
Including the ones who are not practicing.
So I developed 5 filters for hadith because I cannot, in a clear conscience, reject all hadith. I cannot and I will not. So I developed 5 filters. First, all 5 filters depend on the matan, like you were saying. First, should not contradict the Quran, number 1. Number 2, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala described the Prophet, وَإِنَّكَ لَعَلَى خُلُقٍ عَظِيمٍ. You have the best of manners and ethics. So any hadith that doesn't have great manners and ethics, I reject it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala described the Prophet as rahma lil alameen. Any hadith that doesn't have mercy, I reject it. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam knew the knowledge of his time. Any hadith that contradict established science today, like the earth is a sphere, it's not flat. Any hadith that establish anything, that talk about anything contradictory to established science, I reject it. Any hadith that contradict common sense, I reject it. 5. And they're not necessarily invented by me. I came out with them based on my previous readings, studying hadith. So these are the, I mean, and right now for the book I'm doing about the themes of the Quran, all this is mentioned specifically with ayat, not with comments, with ayat, because the book is about the ayat of the Quran, the verses, divided into topics. So I suggest that maybe I'll run them by you.
Sure.
And that's the best way we get what we're talking about into documentation in a book, and later on Amazon, it'll be sold to thousands of people.
Sure.
And you never know who would read it and be influenced by it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Inshallah. Jazakallah khair.
Sure.
I have a comment if I can. Just a small thing about the hadith. In the Hanafi fiqh, they don't consider Sahaba anyone who met or heard or just saw Rasulullah maybe for a day or 2 or 3. Their measurement is the only Kibar al-Sahaba. And how many of that they consider? Maybe 10 more or less. That's what they consider. Oh, yes. I mean, the resources is Dr. Salah Abu al-Hajj. He is the most maybe knowledgeable one in the fiqh, Hanafi fiqh in Jordan. He's a PhD and he's a teacher, I think, somewhere. And he is very well known in fiqh al-Hanafi. This was changed, I believe, in 1500 or something by Kamaluddin ibn al-Humam. He changed the whole madhab of Abu Hanifa, and it became just regular similar to Shafi'i and others. But before, Abu Hanifa madhab was one of they considered Ahlul Ra'i, the opinion. Well, this is one of the changes that maybe we need to look at it in microscope and understand what happened. Then other change, I mean, okay, I'll go back now to the original subject. The problem is Alam al-Afkar, as Malik ibn Nabi called it. Alam al-Afkar, the universe of ideas.
Thoughts.
There is, yes. So ideas were corrupted in our history a while ago. I mean, I was listening to Dr. Muhammad al-Tullabi. He's one of the historian from Morocco, and he has a project on civilization or Nuhud, Renaissance. And him and others, I mean, lots of people talk about that. The fiqh, I mean, it was, Muslims were forced to deny al-aql, intellect. And instead of that, we have bada'il. I mean, instead of that, we got
alternatives.
Alternatives, exactly. Thank you for that correction. Now, الفقه الأشعري kind of deny العقل. Also, what they call الصوفية الانسحابية. The Sufiya withdrawing from life. If you mix these two together, you will feel how, or you can see how Muslims, instead of being the source of knowledge or source of science at that time, if you look at Al-Bayruni, Ibn Sina, Ibn al-Haytham, Jabir ibn Hayyan, they created the scientific method of thinking. And based off that, lots of inventions we got. Imagine Ibn Sina's book, Al-Qanun fi al-Tibb, Qanun in medicine, stayed as a text in Europe for 400 years. Ibn al-Haytham created the idea of camera, and he did an experiment called Qumra, where he was able to have an image of an object on a wall. It's the same idea of camera. And they took Qumra and made it camera. Same thing, Jabir ibn Hayyan, he created the chemical reaction and the equations and all that. Al-Khwarizmi, he created the algorithm. Life without algorithms is, we will go back to the Stone Age. So all that, at one time, we reached to that level, but then everything went down back to before this level. Why? Because we have ideas in Alam al-Afkar, in the universe of ideas, that stop that and push them back. If everything was in that side was considered haram, was not allowed. Aql is not acceptable anymore. And this was actually, if you look at the universities from that time until maybe the Turkish time, there was no science in these, no medicine, no engineering, no math, nothing. If anybody can find, please let me know. There is nothing. We have no engineers. If you want to be engineer or doctor, you go to London or Paris or something. But in Damascus or Quds or Cairo or some, there is nothing. Or Morocco or Tunisia, no real universities. I mean, this came back after the British and the French, but this is what Alam al-Afkar, we were actually replacing the good ideas with ideas that took us back in history. That's what I'm trying to say.
That's true. That's a Salafi wave, and Salafi is not an organization or it's a phenomenon. It's a mindset, and it is the dominant one. Believe it or not, the Muslim world is dominated by the Salafi mindset.
Even the non-religious. Even the non-religious.
Including the non-religious. And what we are talking about now, some Salafi people will be offended, but some non-practicing Muslim will be offended. They will think that we're going out of Islam.
Yes.
If you bring somebody who's not praying.
American influence, they call it.
Yeah. If you bring someone who is not praying, who may be even drinking and doing a lot of sins and not practicing Islam, but in their mind, Islam is the Salafi version.
Yeah.
That's the truth. And in the minds of everybody, it's still to be safe, make it haram. And the more strict you are, the better Muslim you are. So if you're not sure, haram is always safe. Make it haram. And if you see someone who is making life very strict for themselves, oh, this is taqi, this is zahid, this is great Muslim. That's not true. It's not by how rigid you are. It doesn't go by that. It goes by what impact you had, what contribution you made to this world to make it a better place, and what you're doing on yourself to be a better person every day. That's what comes down to. It's not like the way you look or your whatever. That's not. It's not the appearance. It's not how rigid you are or how strict. it's about what are you doing, what is your contribution and impact to make this world a better place, and what are you doing to be a better person every day. Other than that, everything else is irrelevant for us. It's between you and Allah. Even if you spend the whole night praying, that doesn't matter for us. That's for you. But how this is going to reflect tomorrow in your behavior at work and your interaction, that's what we need to see.
Yes.
Now, it's a product. But what you're doing between you and Allah, if it does not translate to this, then it is inefficient.
If tazkiyah does not translate into islah, has no use.
It has no use. It's inefficient.
Dr. Suhail, by the way, Muhammad was talking about Ibn Sina and some great people. I want to remind him that Ibn Sina in his time was declared kafir.
Yeah. And Ibn Rushd.
And Ibn Rushd, they burned his books.
Yeah.
I just want to add something. I mean, I did not come up to these ideas just because, okay, I like to attack the history or the tradition or the Torah. No, I was at one time when I was a student, I was activist in the Islamic movement, and we believed of the Sunnah as their understanding, the Salafi understanding. So after, several, especially the Arab Spring, and the inefficient way Muslim groups try to do their things, and the inability to do anything or introduce anything, that led me to start thinking, where is the problem? Why we are unable to do things? How can we just take the history and try to apply it without thinking? So this critical thinking and this study of history, study of our religion and all that, wasn't just, I like to do that because I'm in America. No, because after suffering, after thinking, after listening, after talking, discussion, we came up to these ideas. There is a lot of, in our history, there is a lot of good things that were like wiped out. We don't hear about. Like the Mu'tazila time. Who knows about Qadi Abdul Jabbar? He wrote a lot of books. It was hidden. What happened, some Yemeni, because Yemeni, what they call them, Zaydi, are very close to Mu'tazila. They took the books and they hid them in walls and covered them in concrete or mud or something. Recently, people found them, but it was just ignored, totally wiped out from the history. Abu Ali al-Jabba'i, one of the great mashayikh in the Mu'tazila time, and he has theories, about the political system and all that stuff. All that was in our history. Just we need to go and learn. Abu Hanif al-Nu'man, his methodology in hadith, it's almost ignored. Ask anybody today, they don't. They justify why they changed it. But if you confront them with, this is Abu Hanifa's method, they go around, they don't accept it. But in our history, I claim we have a lot of good things that we can just re-study and try to reintroduce. Because what we have, especially in America has, it's a mix between the two opposites, the Sufi and Salafi. It's either extreme Sufi or extreme Salafi, and mix between them. We don't have critical thinking. You listen to most of the thinkers in America, especially the big names that they go to ISNA, ICNA, and these conferences. They just repeat the same thing, and they are limited with that understanding. They cannot go beyond that understanding. So I'm just saying, if anybody's saying, oh, you are because you are in America or you're American Islam. No, that's not American Islam. This is the real Islam. This is the core values of Islam. This is the major scholars. They lived, and some of them were maybe lived for, and they sacrificed their lives because of these ideas. So that's what I'm trying to say.
That's true.
May I mention something here? I gave the khutbah last Friday. And the topic I discussed may apply to this discussion as well. I was trying to teach the audience about the difference between Makki surahs and Madani surahs. And I make it very brief. This is 86 Makki surahs and about 28 Madani. Now, the Makki surahs for 13 years in Mecca, Rasulullah was building the foundation of faith. And he produced a generation of up, you mentioned 10, maybe up to 100 Muslims in Mecca who became good Muslims, and they led the nation after that. Now, I mentioned to the audience that in Mecca, the Makki surahs, there was no salat, there was no siyam, there was no zakat, there was no hajj. There was tawheed, there was iman, yawm al-qiyamah, al-hisab. There was an argument, intellectual argument to defeat the existing ideas of the mushrikeen. There was mahasil al-akhlaq, truthfulness, mercy, compassion, all these good things. And there was qisas al-anbiya. Now, if we take that and we understand that this basically was the foundation that produced Abu Bakr Siddiq and produced Umar al-Khattab and Uthman and Ali and the great Sahabas who led the rest of the community after that and produced this great light that still exists until today. If we look at that and give it enough attention and distinguish between it and the common practice today, maybe we will learn something. I mean, I don't know if this is something worth talking about or not.
It is, because there was a wisdom in what the Prophet ﷺ did, that you commit people to the deen, to the religion, and to its mission and its goals, so that they don't misunderstand Islam in a superficial way as simple list of tasks of do's and don'ts. So these tasks, they came later. And unfortunately, even though it was done that way to avoid reducing Islam to a list of tasks or a list of sha'air, we ended up doing it. Now, we ended up now, if you ask majority of Muslims about Islam, the answer will be, you need to pray 5 times, you need to fast a month of Ramadan, you need to perform Hajj once in your, etc. And you do that so that Allah will not throw you in, send you to hellfire, and will admit you to heaven. That's not how Rasul ﷺ presented it. Rasul ﷺ presented it as a mission of change, as
Tawheed versus
Tawheed,
yes.
that will produce, transform. So it's a faith or iman and risala and mission that will transform the individual and turn that individual into an agent of change and form from those individuals a movement of change. That's how Rasul ﷺ presented Islam. So that's why they spent those 13 years. He spent those 13 years making sure that that commitment is solid, because he's going to build on it. If it is shaky, then nothing. So reinforcing the foundations in Mecca in the face of challenges in Mecca, so that when the challenges became much bigger in Medina, because now you're establishing a new state with a very different model in a tribal society. So the challenges are big. The challenges from inside and from outside, internal and external.
Yes.
Those people were up to the challenge.
Yes.
Why? Because of that. It's like, nowadays the teams that go to the World Cup to win, they prepare for a year or two. They prepare every detail. Just to let you know, the German team who won the World Cup in Brazil in 2014. I think 3 or 4 years before the World Cup. A delegation from Germany came and scout the whole Brazil, looking for a place where the German team will camp. They looked for the luxury hotels and for resorts and for the campsites, and they found none meets their requirement. They built one for them.
Wow.
They have a list of requirements for the team to be able to focus, to be able to merge, to function as a team, etc. They found none, even though Brazil is full of great facilities. They found none that meets the requirements, so they built one. 3 years or 4. That's, I mean, just to use the analogy, Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was preparing people to change the world and to lead the world. So he spent 13 years, not 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's when you are serious about change. That's why, and I'm very, very, very frustrated with the existing model in our community that is just build facilities and organize activity and be happy that the mosque is full and you have 2 Jumu'ah or 3 Jumu'ah. And alhamdulillah, community is growing. We have now bigger mosque, and we established even another mosque, and etc. That's not the prophetic model. With this model, you will go nowhere. And I mentioned, and I will keep mentioning it. If every Muslim in the world nowadays subscribe to this current version of Islam, nothing will change. And how many what's the percentage of practicing Muslims in America or all over the world? Whatever that percentage is, I'm telling you, make it 100%. Push it, 100% of Muslims praying, not drinking, etc. Nothing will change in societies. Because we have seen it growing from very small percentage in the 60s and the 50s, etc., to become to mosques are flooded with people, and we did not see any change. What is going to convince me that if going from 0% to 40 or 50% did not make any change, how going from 50 to 70 is going to do any change? No, it's not going to do anything. It's a defective version. It's you know, when they sell a car that is defective and then they call it back to fix it, and we have a defective version. Why selling it again?
A lemon.
Huh?
That's what they call it, a lemon.
Yeah. Yeah. Why you're selling it to more people? If it is defective, call it back, fix it, and then send it back to people. So that's what we have. And unless we come to this reality, the sooner the better. It's never too late for change, but delaying change will make it harder. Why? Because those ideas will settle even deeper, and then the world becoming much more competitive, and change is not easy by itself, even in normal conditions, but the more you delay it, the more costly it becomes.
May I mention something really brief?
And I know it's bad, but you know, accept it now. I know it's bad to say that, wallahi, we have been subscribing to a version of Islam that is very superficial, very defective, and we need to try to find the original Islam. It's not easy for anybody to accept that you were wrong for 10 years or 20 or 30. Nobody, it's not easy. But what good is going to do you if you are denying a reality or truth or postponing accepting it? It's like somebody has a very serious disease and he doesn't want to hear about it. He wants the doctor to come to tell him, you have a simple thing that we're going to fix it quickly. That's so. If he goes to a doctor who tells them the truth, they don't like it. You go to another doctor, say, no, don't worry about it. This is easy to fix. That's what they want to hear. But that's not going to help them. Yes.
Doctor, I wanted to mention in the great movie of The Message, الرسالة, rahmatullah عليه, المخرج العقاد, he has a scene when I think Ja'far ibn Abi Talib, I believe it was Ja'far, who was questioned by Najashi, the king of Abyssinia, Habasha. And he said, "What does your prophet say?" And if anybody remembers that, I mean, I know more or less what he said. He did not mention anything about praying or fasting or Hajj. He says we have a man, we know his origins, his family, his akhlaq, his amana, his, and he came to us and he ordered us to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 mahasinul akhlaq. Mahasinul akhlaq, being upright, being righteous, being merciful, taking care of your family and yatim, and taking care of our women, and being fair to each other. I mean, mashallah, this is how they understood the message of Muhammad. There was no Sharia involved at all. I mean, everything he said was basically what we are discussing. We need to change as individuals, as small community, medium, bigger communities, into Tawheed, Imam Allah Azza wa Jal, Makarimul Akhlaq. If we can do that, I think we can get somewhere. I'm not sure how fast, how quickly, but if we don't do that, we're getting nowhere. I mean, we can pray all night, and the next day, we will cheat.
Yeah.
We will raise the prices in our stores because we think, all these bad practices based on greed and selfishness and ego, and our prayers did not affect us in any positive way. And exactly what you said, we will go nowhere.
And why next day? At the same time.
At the same time.
At the same time. I mean, in many Muslim countries, you find the person, the employee, in one drawer he has the prayer rag, and the other drawer is for bribery. And then if hears the adhan, he say, "No, I cannot serve you now because I'm going to pray." And then when they come back and serve you, they ask for a bribery. They don't see any contradiction whatsoever.
No contradiction.
So let's make a conclusion here of what we're talking about. I've been working on a couple of articles. They're titled "From Rituals to Values."
Great.
Hello.
What we're been practicing for the last 400 years, not few years, 400 years, practicing rituals, doing those rituals because we thought this is what Allah asked us to do, and that's it. We don't even see khatibs on Fridays talking about those values as if they are the essence of the religion. And unless we make the change, we still need to pray 5 times a day because it's fard. We still need to fast. We still need to do Hajj. But we need in our daily life to learn those values from the Quran. Alhamdulillah. We need to practice those values. We need to learn that they exist. We need to know their importance, and we need to practice them. And this is the Islam that we need to learn. It is a complete offer that has everything in it. But I mean, look, one of the things I've been trying to find out for my book, one of the values I learned from the Quran, I learned from the Prophet ﷺ, the minute the people of Medina came to him to give him bi'ah, he asked them on what basis. They were shocked. He said, "Our religion is contractual. I need to give you a contract that show you what I owe you, what you owe me, your rights and your obligations, my right and my obligation." I try to reflect that in some ayahs. As sure as I am of the Constitution of Medina and its existence, I'm as sure it existed as I am of the Quran. Couldn't find specific ayahs about this. So I'm using those ayahs about the necessity of having a contract, because that's a contract. I mean, if I want to buy something from a merchant wholesale, I write a contract with him. If I want to run a city, I should have a contract, or the city should give me a contract. One of the two. But we cannot anymore say he's a hakim, he's the governor, he is the king, he is the khalifa without a contract. Those maqasid al-sharia are constitutional entries into a constitution. They are articles in a constitution. حرية العبادة, حق الدين, حق النسل, حقوق. They should be constitutional articles. So that's the first thing that we need to do. In other words, Muhammad was talking about some great thinkers in Islamic history. In their time, they were great. Discovering their books today will only tell me how great they were in their time, historically. It's Allah is asking us today to produce for our countries, for the places where we live, theories that will be as practicable, that will be as effective as the theory they produced. That's all there is to it. If we go away without producing anything, we're nothing. People will not remember that we did anything. You know, we need to leave behind some things that will be beneficial to people. And don't worry about how important it is. فأما الزبد فيذهب جفاء وأما ما ينفع الناس فيمكث في الأرض. So let's do it, and forget what who will criticize and who will disagree. Thank you.
That's true.
Abu Omar, the verse you said you could not find a verse in the Quran that talks about contract. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا أوفوا بالعقود. Does that not?
He didn't say which عقود. There is no verse that specify if you want to govern people to sign a contract with them. That tells me that the word عقود applies to everything.
Yeah.
That's the way it should be. But how come Muawiyah didn't listen to this? How come Yazid didn't listen to it? How come Al-Hakam didn't listen to this? How come the Abbasid didn't listen to this? They ran great countries, but they did not sensitively feel one thing. That was the first thing the Prophet ﷺ did. In order to have a relationship with you, we have to have a contract. Heck, if you must have a contract with your wife, shouldn't you have a contract with your people? That's the problem. We have a history that overlooked obligations.
And then we blame everything on Nasib, Qadar,
and that's another story.
And he actually applied that. Rasul ﷺ did not lead just haphazardly. He produced a constitution. It is the first state that was based on constitution and citizenship in the history of humanity.
Social contract. A social contract. First in history. First social contract in history.
Because before that, there was tribes, and there was the people who are ruling on behalf of Allah, Dhullullah fil ard, which is a king with absolute power.
Yeah.
Because he represents God.
Yes.
But this form that the Prophet ﷺ presented, which is a nation based on constitution, binding constitution, and citizenship. In that constitution was very clear that everybody is a citizen and they have equal rights and equal duties and everything. So, and I keep saying that in the time of Rasul ﷺ, and even though Rasul ﷺ has that special status as a prophet, but especially in the time of Khulafa al-Rashidin, at the time of Rasul ﷺ, minus the fact that he was receiving wahy, revelation, but the time of Khulafa al-Rashidin, all the elements of democracy, you find them there. Because at the end of the day, democracy, social contract, transparency, accountability, equal opportunity, leadership by consent, and all of them were there. But we failed to institutionalize it. We
Yes.
failed to turn it into an institution. And then we went back to dynasty rule.
Yes.
And then the West came and established democracy. But all the essential element of democracy, you find them at the time of Khilafah al-Rashida. And that confirms that Islam does not have political system. It has political principles.
Yes.
Has political principles, and it's up
Yes.
to people to come up with a system that
Yes.
satisfy those political principles. And that's what Muslim did. Nobody can say that Abu Bakr Siddiq forced himself on people or ruled because he was the son of somebody. Umar ibn Khattab did not force himself on people. Uthman did not force. It was leadership by consent. Muslims accepting them willingly. So leadership by consent, they were accountable, they were transparent. People know that they have the duties and the right to correct them if they go wrong, and they did that. But at that time, it was done in a very primitive way. There was no parliament, there was no institution of power that can be suitable for a small community and small city. It cannot be suitable to run a country. To run a country, you have to turn those principles into institutions. And that's what we failed miserably to do. And that's what the West was able to do. Were able to come up with the system that transitioned them from the absolute power, absolute monarchy, where you have this, the kings and then the clergy, etc., having absolute power and having a deal between them to share power, and the rest have no say. They have no stake because they were suppressed completely, not only politically, but even economically. No stake and no say. Totally marginal. But that's not the original directives of Islam. Islam, again, was in the early days, was what were applied, practiced all the essential element of democracy.
Yes. Doctor, before the time goes by, this is already 1 hour, 90 minutes. What are we going to do about the decision to meet at the mosque and talk about the relationship between parents and children, like we decided last week?
والله مش عارف أبو عبد الله if he has any update.
He's here with us.
Yeah.
I didn't hear the question. I apologize,
Last week, Abu Abdullah, we decided that we're going to have a large meeting at the mosque. We thought about downstairs and invite people and let Dr. Suhail talk to them about the relationship between parents and children.
Yeah, we will do that in November.
In November.
In
Okay.
November, yeah, during the holiday.
Okay.
Just to make sure everybody can attend the
very good
meeting, inshallah.
Inshallah.
We have time for 1 minute comment on accountability. And it comes maybe as a surprise to many, because even when we were talking about it, even Rasulullah ﷺ was accountable.
Absolutely.
And I will mention one incident here that is absolutely beautiful and makes me cry every time I listen to it. It was at the time of the Battle of Hunayn, when Rasulullah ﷺ, they had tons and tons of spoils of war. And he started giving out to all these people from Mecca, al-mu'allafati qulubuhum. He gave. And the people of Medina, al-Ansar, they were just watching. I mean, all these spoils are gone to all these new Muslims. and they are the ones who sacrificed for 10 years, right? And, they were shy about it, but they came to Rasulullah in a blaming way. Ya Rasulullah, where's our share, right? I mean, and I suggest everyone listens to this speech here, how Rasulullah ﷺ explained to them what he did, and get them to consent and accept that, let the people take the money and you take me. It was absolutely beautiful. But the people of Medina, understood that even Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was accountable. You know, we have a contract with you. You come to us, we protect you, we support you, and you give us the new religion, and you be a judge, and you be fair, and you make peace among us. And it was win-win two-way situation. And in Hunayn, they felt that it was not fair what he did, so they came asking him, why, where's accountability? Of course, Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anh, من رأى منكم في اعوجاجا فليقومه. Anybody who sees me going wrong, going right or left, please straighten me up. Accountability, accountability. I don't think we mentioned it enough today.
That's true. We have a great religion that we need to discover. It was lost. For all practical purposes, it was lost. Few items were left from it. They are not producing anything because they are not the essence of the deen. They are not the engine. And the evidence is for 13 years, we have Muslims who committed to this deen before knowing how to pray or fasting or anything. I'm not diminishing the importance of these ibadat, but I'm putting things in perspective. There is tawheed, faith, a relationship with Allah that we'll be working on, that will translate into a journey, life journey of tazkiyah and islah. And then while you're doing that, part of your tazkiyah and part of the power that you need for that mission comes from the ibadat and comes from the fiqh. That's the paradigm that was turned upside down. So now Islam is defined as the ibadat. No, Islam is a faith. It's a complete submission with complete love of Allah, full dedication to fulfill the purpose of Allah. And that translates, as I said, into a life journey, lifelong journey of tazkiyah and islah, working on yourself continuously to be a better person and increasing and pushing your limits to make this world a better place. While you're doing that, part of doing this, in order for you to succeed in this, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala prescribed the ibadat to strengthen you and made things haram because they are distraction and they can waste your energy and can make you lose focus. So they make them haram. He made them haram and then gave you these source of energy, these ibadat, in which, first of all, they are meant to express that relationship with Allah. How do you express that relationship? You express it in the form of ibadat. Second, by getting the power that you need, because that mission is very demanding. That's why the Sahaba were not praying because it was fard. The Sahaba were praying because it was a need. It was, they needed the prayer, one, to express their love and gratitude to Allah, because, you know, when somebody does a big favor to you, you keep always asking yourself, what can I do to express my appreciation?
Yes.
When it comes, وَلِلَّهِ الْمَثَلُ الْأَعْلَى, you feel that Allah has given you so much, and you're looking for ways to express your gratitude. Allah gave you prayer, fasting, etc. One, to express that gratitude. Two, to strengthen that iman. And we know Salah, when it is done properly, what does it do to iman? We know Ramadan, what does it do to iman? To strengthen that iman. And third, to give you the fuel that you need to keep going, because that mission, when you fulfill it properly, it's very demanding. You're going to be mocked, you're going to be resisted, people will make fun of you, people will isolate you, will avoid you, because you're trying to get them out of their comfort zone, and because you want to make them stop taking those painkillers so that they can treat the illness itself rather than taking painkillers. And that's why they're not going to like it, because that requires a lot of patience, and because it is very demanding. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us. That's why the companions, even though they are exhausted from the activity, from the effort they do during the day, at night they spend it praying. because that's refueling. That's like you put your cell phone on the to be charged so that you can use during the day. They were charging their batteries, their faith during the night, so that they come in the morning very motivated, very empowered, very inspired to continue that journey. And that's why I find the best, one of the best description of the companions, كانوا رهبانا بالليل فرسانا بالنهار. رهبانا بالليل فرسانا بالنهار. People who are on a mission during the day, that mission caused them to be really drained emotionally, and then at night they refuel. رهبانا, they're monks at night, because that's where you get their iman recharged, and etc. Unfortunately, that paradigm has collapsed, and when they try to rebuild it, they rebuild it with the wrong model. They focused on the sha'air, the rituals. They focused on the appearances. They focused on halal and haram, and they forget the essence. The essence that Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was reinforcing in Mecca for 13 years. That was lost.
Jazakumullah khair.
وإياكم إن شاء الله.
Jazakumullah khair. Inshallah, this Friday we will have a meeting at Bidish for the locals. Muhammad Habbal, you are welcome if you can fly.
I want to come visit soon, inshallah.
Inshallah.
Jazakumullah khair. See you next week, inshallah.
Is Dr. Suhail coming?
He is. Yes, he is here.
Alhamdulillah.
Inshallah.
Okay.
Inshallah.
See you. See everybody, inshallah. See you.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.